Emo Clue, Eno Eve. That is actually Witch Speak for welcome everyone. I don't know if anybody knew that, but I'm actually quite fluent in that now. But welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. I cannot believe I'm actually saying that in front of Cressida Cowell, the author of the How to Train Your Dragon series, which is what inspired my channel name. Like, this is magical. Thank you so much for joining me, Cressida. This is incredible.
Absolute pleasure, and I'm completely thrilled that my books inspired your channel. How good is that? That's fantastic.
Yeah, and actually, I heard a rumor that when you were doing your How to Train Your Dragon books, that you were actually going to have Gavins instead of dragons. So I actually heard that. Like, is there any truth to that, or?
Well, if you believe it's true, Gavin, who am I to say?
That's what I'll be taking with me. That's the story I will tell everyone from now on.
I often prefer a story to the actual truth.
Same. And is it really like not the truth? It's just like
the thing. There are some people that say that Vikings didn't really have dragons, and I just say, well, have you actually ever been to Viking times? Come on.
Exactly.
I mean, really, you haven't been there, maybe, who knows?
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So there we go. Power of
haven't they just discovered some amazing new particle or something that nobody knew what it was? I always find it fascinating what we don't know, and what we don't know is so huge. That whole dark matter thing. What is that?
Oh my gosh. My mind is blown every time when they discover new planets or new plants or new species in the ocean. I'm like, what more can we possibly discover on this planet? And it's one of the reasons I love books like yours. They open that imagination up that there is way more out there and we just don't know. Like, this could have happened. Wizards of Once could have happened, really. How to Train Your Dragon could have happened. We just don't know.
There are forces like maybe magical forces that we still don't understand that are governing our world,
Exactly.
and things that we thought were true were suddenly upended by one incredible human being coming along and turning our view of the world on its head. And I mean, that's why I love writing for children and talking to children, because they're very open to those possibilities. They're very open in general to the idea of the impossible being possible. And that's what makes them so fascinating. Talking to children, they can still come up with questions and ideas that really make you think.
Yeah, even I guess as an author as well, that's you discover something new every day from the children that you're kind of imparting your imagination on through your books. So that must be like really awesome as well.
Yeah, no, I've really missed that during lockdown, actually, that direct meeting the kids and talking to them and bouncing off them. I have missed that very much because, you just don't get to do that. Although it's been fun, you have been able to do things like have festivals where the events can be free. And, there's been some, good things that have come out of it as well. But yes, I've really missed that direct contact. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I totally get that. But it'll just make that when the events start back up again, when you get to go to schools and you get to do, the social interaction again, it's just going to make it that much more magical. Knowing like absence makes the heart grow fonder, I've always thought. So it's going to be incredible, I think. Anyway, we are actually here today to celebrate and talk about not brand new, it came out in September, but the paperback edition of Never and Forever, the fourth and final book. I mean, it breaks my heart every single time. The fourth and final book of the Wizards of One series is coming out in paperback on the 27th of May. So that is essentially what we'll be talking about today. All things Wizards of One. Honestly, I am obsessed. And there will be no spoilers in this interview either. So if anybody's watching and hasn't yet read Never and Forever, we will not be spoiling who the unknown narrator is. Do not worry. Don't worry. Cressida knows. It literally is the biggest mystery in children's history. I think it rivals Who Shot JR. It's like the children's book version of Who Shot JR. So that's I love it. I love it. When I got Never and Forever, it was the first book I got when bookshops reopened, and it came to my shop, and I was so excited. It came through. I was like, I have to read this right now because I need to find out everything. I need to know how it ends, but I needed to find out everything. So yeah, I was just.
Well, you see, that's good. That is my job. My job
Mm,
is to make you want to read it, so that job done. I'm pleased to hear that. And did you notice, this isn't going to be a spoiler, but just because I know that some people do that, I was really pleased with this because some kids, parents got back to
oh
me that the kid had turned straight to the epilogue. Okay.
yes, yes,
And I
that was brilliant.
And these parents wrote to me saying the kids had done that, and then they heard them really chuckling in the next room. And it says, anyone who has skipped this epilogue before reading the rest of the story is a big cheat and should go chapter one, or I'll get really quite shirty. And they were really pleased because it's almost like there. I think that's why that's so satisfying for the child is that
Mm,
it's almost like you've read their mind. It's like a direct. It's what I'm quite often doing with the authorial voice anyway.
yeah.
It's almost confidential. It's like you and I just chatting to one another, and it's like me sort of
Breaking
anticipating
the fourth wall kind of thing, talking directly to the children. Yeah,
this. And they love that, and it's a kind again it's a way of it's a way of it's a way of making it feel very like a kind of private communication between you and the reader, and making that connection and sort of acknowledging them and getting them involved. And so that's why I use that a lot in the authorial voice, being very break the fourth wally. It's a really interesting balance to do. Actually, from a technical point of view, I love technical challenges. Um, so it's very interesting balance to do because I use this a lot, breaking the fourth wall and a very strong authorial voice, almost like very like Henry Fielding and very old-fashioned, kind of much more didactic, old-fashioned authors, you know. uh, But you have to use it carefully because it can be intrusive, and if you
mm,
use it too much, you don't get the kid also doesn't get engaged and involved in the story and in the peril and sort of immersed. So it's a real interesting balancing act of using it at some points, but then withdrawing and not using it consistently through. So if you, I sort of I kind of use these different narrative styles
yeah.
through the book. These are very small books, so again, I have to be quite careful to balance everything because I want to also achieve that immersive experience and the adventure, and and the fourth wall sort of breaks it. And the same way comedy sometimes breaks it.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I have to reel back the comedy in order to let the tragic moments and the emotional moments speak. But it's fascinating. I mean, it's endlessly fascinating.
Well, that's why you're the author and I'm the book consumer, because I don't even think I could be anywhere near that technical. It's done so brilliantly in the book series, like just in as general from the very beginning all the way to the end. It just has this beautiful arc of like that authorial voice, that kind of the character work of it, and just kind of getting from the first Wizards of Wands to the final one. And I do want to say as well, like before we like probably start like chatting about like I ask you all the questions, I do have all of the pre-order links, all of the purchase links in the description box. So if anybody has not yet read this series, please do. I've got all of the links in the description box. Not just that, I have Cressida's social links too. And Cressida has this incredible YouTube as well as YouTube channel where Cressida also reads from. Well, you've been reading from How to Train Your Dragon and the Wizards of Wands now, haven't you? Because I read along with the first How to Train Your Dragon book last year when you first started putting them up, and it was one of my favorite experiences because you do the voices, but you also like show the illustrations as well, like to the camera. So even though I was reading along, I just wanted to watch you read it instead because you were showing all the photos too. And I was like, oh, that's incredible. So please do like subscribe to Cressida, buy the books. Honestly, I would be made up if you did that. So the YouTube channel is amazing.
Thank you, Gav. Yes, I suppose it's a different thing, even, I mean, because you couldn't possibly try. to rival David Tennant on all.
Uh,
The guy is a flippin' genius. How lucky was I with him? I mean, so he does this, I mean, tour de force with both
mm.
Dragon books and the Wizard books. He's absolute genius and just, oh, he brings it to life in a way I could never have imagined. He was just brilliant. But it's a different thing again, isn't it? It's interesting, having the own author reading it aloud. That's another experience again. I mean, I'm not an actor and I couldn't even possibly, but it's a different thing. And then you can show the illustrations. And I mean, sometimes I get, it's all about the way into the stories, isn't it? And sometimes I get people saying, "Oh, my kids started with the film, or my kids started with the audio. They weren't very confident on the on the on the books, on reading, on the mechanics of reading." Sometimes kids are so smart, but they struggle with just the mechanics of reading, so it can really put them off. So they can start with the audio and then get so into the story that they then start reading and then get a different thing from it. So it's fun to give them all these different entry points, I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially since you were talking earlier about kind of all of these distractions that kids face these days with
Yeah.
screens and all of that. With say like the How to Train Your Dragon series, we had the film. Some people might have watched the film first and thought, oh, you know what, I really want to read the book now. They might not actually like be book lovers, but they
Yeah.
do then progress. And then with the audiobooks too, definitely brilliantly narrated by David Tennant. Like the best experiences I have is when I read with the physical book, like for the Wizards of One series, say the illustrations as well, because I do love the audiobooks, but I feel like you
Yeah.
have to say the illustrations too. Like they add something extra to it as well. And then yeah, it's just a complete package. So to have all of that accessible for children, yeah, because children might not be able to, read a book physically, and their attention span might be wandering or anything, they might just have difficulties doing that. But we have all of these access points now that I probably didn't have as a kid. I can't remember. Oh wait, I had cassettes. I had cassettes of audiobooks, but it was for very limited
Yeah.
books. It wasn't like a something you
Oh,
could easily access. Yeah,
yeah.
so that was a totally different thing back
Yeah.
in my day.
You're right, and actually, it would really help your reading as well if you're listening to the audio and then you're following along. I mean, that helps. I mean, lots of parents have said that as well. I know. I
Yeah.
remember. You see, that we didn't have very many audios, but the ones that we had, and that's why I write the How to Train Your Dragon books to be read aloud, because kids are often much cleverer than their reading ability allows them to access, but also because I have such a memory of, we did a lot of journeys in the car up to Scotland. I mean, we used to drive hours. Anyway, long story. But the audios that we listened together as a family, those family experiences with children and parents enjoying things together are so. I mean, I remember, my family and other animals we listened to, and Sherlock Holmes, the footsteps of a gigantic hound. I can still remember those family and us all enjoying it together. And I
Yeah.
remember, like Morecambe and Wise, that was a big deal. That was the big family Christmas show. And the fact that we all enjoyed it together was so bonding and made the experience so precious. So that's why I particularly write these books to be read aloud as well as just on their own, because it's that family experience of bonding together, and that then sends the message to the kid that stories have this power. They have the power to make, my mum laugh, my dad cry, and we're enjoying this together. And that just, and particularly when you're writing, as I often am, about parent-child relationships, it's a really powerful sort of shared thing together.
100%, especially since you write in fantasy, but I feel like there's just so many like real world themes in your books as well that does help us connect to that. So I guess just as an author, do you take a lot from your like own childhood when you're writing? Is that what inspired you to write? Is that kind of where your origin story lies? Is that with your family and sharing those amazing experiences together with the power of like reading and stories?
Yes. Well, I mean, I obviously do. I have to say, Gav, I don't sit down and think, right, I'm now going to write write a book about my relationship with my father. I never
Yeah.
did that. I just sort of, I suppose I wrote. I mean, I'll just tell you about the evolution of How to Train Your Dragon. Basically, I just had a baby, and there's a moment when you have a baby when you look in the back of the car and you think they're going to let me out of hospital with a baby, but know nothing about babies, you know. So you start looking up about babies and looking back to your childhood and thinking, how was I brought up? And so so I was then looking, that I started thinking about the island where I spent a lot of time because my dad was a bird watcher and everything. So the Isle of Burke is a real place, and we spent every summer there. And when you're a child, you just think that's normal. it's not. It's not till you get older and you think, yeah, not so very normal, really. You know.
Sounds amazing. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. And we'd be dropped off by a local boatman and picked up again, 2 weeks later. This is when, with two babies, what were they thinking? No telephone, no way of, contacting the outside world. You still can't get a telephone connection unless you go out to sea in a boat. I mean, yeah. So and then when my dad had a house built on the island from when I was about 9, we would spend long period, we would take, we get a boat. He had a boat so we could go and catch fish. And so we did spend the whole summer without a television. So those experiences, and that was where the Vikings came to when they first invaded Great Britain, and last place we left. So there's a lot of Viking stories on those islands. So that was all my childhood. And I was, and that's how the Viking idea, and Vikings believed dragons existed. But the sort of emotional heart of the story, I guess, was parental relationships and how you work that out, how to train your dragon, how to train your child, how to train your parent. It's all those
Yeah,
things.
how to train your Gavin, yeah.
Gavin, how to train your Gavin, yeah. I mean, and Stoic is working out how to be a father to this son who isn't what he expected. And it is, hiccup is another name for a mistake. And we learn that he's kind of a runt, and Stoic has to learn to embrace his magical son, his magnificent son. And he does, to do it's a journey. It's a journey, but he does.
It always is.
Yeah, love conquers all, and he learned something. Stoic's journey of learning something as Hiccup's learning something, and Hiccup is learning to be a parent by being a parent to Toothless, and so there's a lot of. So you're telling the story from the point of view of the parent, of the adult. That's told in a very unusual way, in that it's bookended by Hiccup as an older person looking back on his childhood. So it's bookended in the first person. Hiccup is an old man looking back on his childhood. But the bulk of the story is in the third person, with the bossy narrative voice. But then you have the kind of children talking to each other in the way that children do. But that creates this kind of bittersweet effect, because of course I'm looking back on my own childhood at the same time, while, like Hiccup, learning to be a parent to my own children. So I was learning to be a parent while I was writing How to Train Your Dragon. So it's quite an emotional, that whole way of telling the story becomes very emotional just by, because it's true life, because it's based on true emotions, because so many children struggle to grow up.
Mhm.
It's about growing up, particularly if they're different from their parents.
Oh
And
my gosh.
and parents find it difficult if their child is different from them. And so I'm dealing with very, personal things to me, but also that's something that lots of people go through. So it touches other people, I think.
Oh, 100%. Like, seriously, I probably cried a little bit in Never and Forever. I'm not going to say this. There is the scene with the parents, And I mean, I guess just like the whole never and forever part of it, like I'll not say it to, but you know, when they're, yeah, oh gosh, but like, I can't, oh, you know what, I can actually edit this out. But the bit when they're accepting of, well, cigarettes and cancel, they're accepting of Wish and Zor, like they finally do embrace them. Like I cried. I was like, gosh, do you know how long I've waited for like my dad to embrace me, or
Oh,
all of that. So it's just like
oh,
it was so touching. I was like, this is yeah, this is what great children's books do. Like they evoke emotion in you, and they, yeah, oh gosh, yeah, it's just fantastic. I love all of that. Anyway.
oh, that's so that's so wonderful that you say that. You see, and that's what you're hoping to do. You're hoping to touch other people. Take your from your own experiences and telling the truth. You have to be very, I think, very truthful, very emotionally truthful, and quite open in order to tell your personal story to a whole load of other people. But if you do that, it can really touch other people and also help them. It can be helpful um, to know that you can, and it doesn't always, it doesn't, I think, I hope that it helps children to realize as well that sometimes it isn't the end of the story. Sometimes, you know, your parent might not have accepted you yet for whatever reason, or have, but they still could.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
still hope for evolution in some way, and I
yeah.
think that can be very helpful. But in order to tell those kind of um, or to have that kind of effect on other people, you have to be pretty truthful about your own, life and your own experiences or struggles or whatever they might be.
Exactly, and I feel like books do help people do that, and I feel like children, it's so important for children to have access to those books, or like somebody else could have this kind of like similar experience when reading The Wizards of Wands potentially. So, I mean, you did recently write this fantastic open letter to the government about libraries and access to libraries, school libraries for children to read like books, and how important is it to you that children do read books and get access to those books? And you're a children's laureate as well. Like you have all of these responsibilities, I guess, or like I guess it might not feel like a responsibility because it's like something that you're really passionate about, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's why I do what I do and why I'm writing, and it's so integral to what I'm doing all the time in writing is trying to get children to read with as much excitement for the joy of it, not because somebody tells you to, or because it's a schooly thing, or because but just for the joy of it. That's what I'm trying to do with making my books look like sweets, making them look, packing them full of illustrations, and making them
So much.
and making it very. I mean, I suppose what I'm trying to do, Gavin, is also making is that but I'm the thing of my laureateship. Reading is magic. It's transformative magic, really, and magic is for everyone. That's really encapsulate. That's my laureateship. That's what I'm doing all of the time, trying to do in the type of books that I'm writing. Quite apart from anything else, um, because and there's decades of research has shown that a kid who reads for the joy of it, and it's all interesting. The research is all about the joy of it, not how well they do or how quickly, but for the joy of it, that is linked to children's later economic success. It's linked to, I mean, eh, let alone mental well-being. The more literacy points you go up, the more likely you are to vote, the more likely you are to own your own home, the more likely you are, I mean, it's not just educationally successful, economically successful, it's when well-being. So it's so important that we read, children read, and everybody does. Not and screens are great, and it's all stories, but reading particularly great for creativity, empathy, and intelligence. Three magical powers that, oh my goodness, the whole world needs. So for me, that having that available to everyone is key. That's why I write these books to be um, not niche books. They are intelligent, but they're and never dumbed down, but they are mass market books. And that's deliberately done because I want them to be for everyone. I want everybody, they're not presented as, oh, this is very clever and you can't possibly, it's very they're presented as being for everyone, because and why that's what I loved about the movies, is that they are intelligent movies, but they're mass market. They are for everyone, and you have to sort of embrace that. Um, uh, and so the library, I'm trying to tell you how the library campaign just comes out of that, because how can books be for everyone if some parents can't afford books, and the children are in schools with primary schools that don't have books? It's impossible. How do they get
Yeah.
their hands? Yeah.
Which is
Um,
why I love the World Book Day, because like children do get that £1 book token, and they can choose any book they want. That's like, and then they come into my store all the time during World Book Day, and it's honestly the best thing. We have the stand and everything, and they've all come in there. They're picking their own book as well, which is part of why it's amazing. Is because like this isn't just like getting handed to them, like read this. This is them just actually going out themselves, probably having their first ever bookshop experience too, and like that transaction, it's brilliant. I love World Book Day so much.
oh well, so I'm on the board of World Book Day, so I'm very pleased to hear that,
Yes.
because
Phew.
I'm I'm on the board of World Book Day for that very reason, because in the same sort of way, yeah. I mean, it's just it's just one it sometimes breaks my heart to go into a school and you want to give away all the books, and it's so nice if you happen to have. I've been lucky in the past. I had a World Book, one of those £1 books, and you can say, oh yeah, no, you can get the book because because you've got this £1 book token. So yes, that's another thing that is so important, owning your own book. That's why in my laureate charter I had so many different things on it that I think went into creating a reader and making reading for everyone. That was one of them, owning your own book, because a dreadful percentage of children in this country don't own a single book. And that's key again in becoming a reader, or it can be a key factor in becoming a reader. So yeah, so much to do, Gav.
Yeah, I can imagine, and not enough time. But it's why you're still doing all of the writing. You're still kind of important. So many great messages to, like, not even just children but adults too. Like, I know there's a lot of people who watch BookTube, which is what I do, and like they take children's book recommendations, because yeah, it's okay for adults to read children's stories too. And I feel like that is or like I feel like people might look down on children's books sometimes if they're, or like, oh, like I started off with children's books, but I've grown out of them, and I'm like, you don't have to. Like, they are still there. They are for everyone. As you say, reading is magic, and magic is for everyone. Children's books are literal magic, and like I feel like anybody who doesn't read children's books are really missing out on some vital kind of important messages, but like great stories, and all of the things that like you as an author does too, like with your book series. So yeah, like I could always go on tangents about why adults should be reading more children's books.
Yeah,
And I'd be here all day. I would.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's it. It's interesting because I don't think there's any subject that you can't really deal with in in writing for children. I mean, when I think of the kind of themes I'm dealing with, these are all kind of environment, politics, what kind of leader do we deserve, you know, uh, oh, fate, predeterminism. I get little kids asking, about destiny, and is your fate predetermined? And children are so smart. You really can deal with everything, and often, in fact, I suppose the one topic is maybe I mean, you can certainly deal with love. For instance, I deal with different kinds of love. Love, friendship, romantic love, all sorts of different types of love. Um, uh, Violence. You have to be
Yeah. Yeah, it can be quite scary. This series can be very scary.
scary. Things can be scary, and
Yeah.
and you do, and you sort of have to deal with those things because children will be faced with scary situations sometimes, and you have to give them the equipment to deal. Or I feel as a writer, it's your job to try and help them deal with scary situations. So as a result, I think in children's book we cover everything, and sometimes we cover them almost more fearlessly. Cover these topics more fearlessly and more, um, and we sort of have to more than adult books do, like the sort of leadership thing and what kind of leaders do we deserve, and that that I don't know. I suppose adult books do deal with those topics as well, but I
Yeah.
agree. Gosh, you're talking to.
Yeah, I just think nobody should ever write children's books off. Like
No,
they are literally I always change them for comfort half the time. So it's just
yeah,
something even as an adult, it's like that part of my childhood that I can tap back into almost. Like it never goes away. Like that kind of childlike person I was. I still
mhm.
am. Like I don't think I've changed much to be honest. But yeah, I kind of yeah, it's why I love children's books. But talking about your books, then I definitely want to talk about the Wizards of Wands because um, like, you first did like this huge series first with How to Train Your Dragon. Were you scared or like nervous about when you finished that series and then coming into a whole new series? Like, was that like a scary thing for you?
Absolutely petrifying. Yes, yes, I think so. I find that very difficult
Mm.
because I suppose 2003 was the first dragon book, and that was my first. I mean, I'd written picture books before. I have to say, I'd written picture books about four. I've been a writer for about, first book 1998, so 5 years. I've been a writer for 5 years of picture books, which people, I have to say, were not that into. I mean, I was, I have to say, I mean, I was kind of toddling along, and but people weren't like, "Oh, hey, this." I say that quite a lot because often children are expecting instant celebrity, instant
Mm,
success, and that was not the way.
yeah.
How to Train Your Dragon was my first book, and it was not like, "Whoa, hey, this is."
Mm,
It was a bit of a cult success. This is way before the movies. This is,
yeah.
um, and it got
7 years, wasn't it? Like it took
7
7 years.
years.
Yeah.
7 years. So it was a cult success. So, but it was my first book, and well, not non-picture book, my first fiction, a chapter book, um, and I loved that it was so entwined. We talked so entwined with my childhood and my passion for the sea and um, uh, for the environment, and it has so many themes that I cared about and characters. I thought, how on earth am I ever going to write something that I mind about as much as this world and these characters? So I think I found it. I think oh the I found it really difficult anticipating, and in fact, I started writing Wizards of Once from about how to break a dragon's heart. So that's four
Oh,
books from the end. I know, really. So I was researching and I was thinking all of that time because I was already anticipating how hard that would be and how it would have to be something really wonderful. Um, yeah, to move to. But I found
oh
it
my
really difficult to say, and I still haven't said goodbye, to be honest. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, good. I don't want you to. I remember, I think you said that you originally intended How to Train Your Dragon to be a trilogy, and then it suddenly turned into like 12 books. Like, I'm kind of still holding out hope that that's going to happen with the Wizards of Once. We're going to end up with 12 Wizards of Once books.
Oh,
I don't want to say goodbye. I don't want to say goodbye to it.
oh, you don't. Well, yeah, but actually, I don't know whether Dragon. I'd even thought it was going to be a trilogy. Actually, I thought it. I think Wizards of Once. I definitely thought it was going to be a
Mm,
trilogy because I promised my husband I would write something something because he said you've got all of these ideas, you can't spend another 10 years just writing wizards. So I said yes, yes, yes,
mm,
I'll just write three. This is
fair. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
that has,
Yeah,
but then my father died in book two, and that was like boom.
yeah.
And so that series had to expand to encompass the death of my father. So when I'm writing Oh God, actually, I might start crying. So I'll try not to cry, Gav. So when I'm writing in Twice Magic about the giant's last breath, that was,
Mm.
I watched my father dying and taking his. Um, anyway, so the book series sort of had to encompass that because that was a big deal, and so I needed to. It just it needed um, it
Time.
needed to encompass that
Yeah.
sadness. And
I
so
needed time.
yes. But also the third book, what I was trying to do, because that was, you know, I was trying in the third book to present the children, because also what I thought with, oh gosh, is this going to be a spoiler, Gav?
It's okay. I can edit it out if it is.
You decide what it is afterwards. But what I thought was, Sycoraxon and Canzo are such inadequate parents. They've
Right?
got so much to learn. I thought, I can't leave the children with just them. I've got to have another character, and I've got to leave them with. Yeah, well, I created Purdator to guide them all, really, to be the guide, not only for the children, but for the parents. Yeah,
Right.
and to make a sort of, because Twice Magic actually, maybe this is more my personal thing. Um, there are two different things. That is to make it feel satisfying for other people. But for me, I felt it was a sad book because it was very much. So I needed the happy book of Not Free Time to complete it into a kind of a quartet, which I felt was really satisfying.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so that that was why that happened. But I agree. It could be you could have another. You could have another three books, and another three books. I never think that things are ended. Even How to Train Your Dragon. I've got an idea for a 13th book. I never told the story of how Hiccup lost his leg. I
oh
did,
my gosh.
and so I mean,
Yeah.
I could do that, but I wish there was more time, Gav.
Yeah, I
I
would tell me about it. Oh,
yes,
never say never and forever. Like never,
never say
like
never
it's
forever. Never say
yeah,
never and I
yeah,
could into that world. I could go back into Never and Forever. Also, I could write that 13th book, but also I've got a
you
new
could.
book I'm writing on. I've got a whole new world I'm writing about and a new
Oh
book.
my god.
I wish there was more time, Gav. If only
Yes,
there was more
I
time.
totally get that. I really do. But like, I also feel like Never and Forever definitely ended on such like it was perfect. It was a perfect ending. So even if you don't revisit, like I won't be mad. But I'm gonna miss it so much.
I know.
Um, yeah, but I guess for you writing this book series because you also illustrated as well.
Yeah.
And when you got up to like Never and Forever, what was your well one what was it like illustrating the series and two like when you got to the final like illustrations and stuff like the final day of writing and illustrating Never and Forever, what was that like?
Well, now have I got dragon? I mean, what I'm trying to do in the illustration, because I went to art school as well as reading English, and so for me telling the story through the visuals as well as the words is very important. I'm really doing that, and I suppose I was just so Dragon is telling a story in these rather scribbly. These are very child accessible. Um, they're the kind of things that I suppose I'm trying to say in the same way that I have different narrative styles running through the books. So I have the other voice, once there was magic, it was a long time ago, and there were dragons when I was a boy. That very, lyrical
Yeah,
author kind of, and that's the interrupty, the first thought. Well, and then you have Fish Takers and Hiccup talking to each other just as if they're just mates, that's a chatty, that makes it feel real and that the kid
yeah,
really is there in the Bronze Age. The same way, you have different ways of illustrating that tell a different. So these kind of things are saying to the kid, "You can do this. This is scratching through the I often do ink blots and, kind of that scratch through and make it look fun and a joyful object, and also drag you through the story. There's a lot of speed and wind, but then what evolved in Fury, actually, by the time I went through Fury, is accompanying that scratchy Quentin Blakey kind of, welcoming you in kind of illustration, was the world building kind of illustration. That's actually something, just between you and me, that I struggle with a bit more because I'm, oh gosh, I hope, oh yeah, it's charging, it's fine. Yeah, because I have it's a bit like Wish, but I have an eye. My eyesight is not very good, so I haven't got a very good visual memory. So I really have to look things up. But I've got much better at it, and that adds another level. And so these kind of illustrations that are very detailed and close up, and they tell a different kind of a story. And I was, they make you enter the world and feel like it's really real, this kind of detail. And I was kind of working on that. I'm just trying to, yes, something like that, which is it's a very emotional kind of moment, but it also makes you feel like the dragon is real. And so
Yes.
the kind of illustrate, from the beginning of Wizards of Once, I think I felt I had more in my storytelling sort of devices, in my illustration, than I did at the beginning of Dragon. I had the emotional illustrations and the world building illustrations right from the beginning. Is this so? Is that what? So these kind of illustrations where
Oh yes.
great big giant and the is that what the kind of question was? That what you asked?
Yeah, I think you. Uh, I
um,
have a froze. Sorry, I think I froze for a second.
yeah. Oh,
I'm back.
you're back.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
bro.
so those kind of illustrations, again, and that snowcat feels like he might be real, and
Yeah.
it's different from the sort of scribbly, cartoony type of illustration. Um, and um, I'm trying to think what's a good. So I was using a lot more of those kind of illustrations in Wizard of Once right from the beginning, um, because
Yeah.
it.
Because I was gonna say I do love the kind of chalk, like when it's all like dark and black, like in all of this, like it's very scary. Like I love atmosphere. Like one of my favorite things about like children's books is atmosphere, like the trees and
Yeah.
all of that. Like it really does build the atmosphere, and those are the things I love.
Mm,
And especially with the witches too.
mm.
Um, oh, like, there's just so much about your illustrations that I think suits this world so brilliantly, and
You
yeah, it
can,
does add to that detail.
but even you see, with something like this is a moment where
Yeah.
Wish is with Caliburn.
Hmm.
I draw that in a very different kind of a way. So that uses a very tender pencil, a very soft pencil, like a 7B or a kind of, because I'm
Great.
trying to get that emotion out of out of whereas other times if I'm doing an action scene I'll be scribbling and the markings will be very a bit like the abstract expressionists. It's very vigorous and it's making you feel, it's dragging you, it's almost like the weather. What you're talking about is the weather.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pathetic fallacy or something. It's the weather of of a story which um y- y- and I find that really interesting. God, it's lovely to talk about it. Not many people talk asking questions about
Yeah.
illustrations, um, but a lot of these things, you're trying to do. I suppose composing a story like this is a bit like a piece of music. That's how I think of it. A bit like a piece of music. So it's so you have these different things going through with the words and also with the pictures that tell almost different emotions. So sometimes it's the excitement you're trying to go for, and sometimes it's the gentle, it's the violins, it's the kind of yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I do with the songs as well. A lot of the I put a lot of songs and poems in because they tell an emotional, they somehow, with poetry and song, and we all know, somehow really, you know, encapsulates things. And so things can sort of build up. So for instance, in How to Train Your Dragon, there's a song, uh, I didn't mean to come here, and I didn't mean to say, it's just where the sea wind blew me one accidental day. And it's the theme of, it's the hooligan theme of Bertie. It's their national anthem. And you have this like a beat that goes repeating, like a little piece of refrain in a piece of music that goes through. And you realize, oh my goodness, that was the national anthem of Burke. And then when uh, Fish Legs learns that he's adopted, and he starts singing this song in order to because he's been looking for his parents, he's been looking for who his parents are, and then when he suddenly sings this song, I didn't mean to come here, and I didn't mean to stay, and it's just where the sea wind. It has
Mm.
that resonance. It's got that, yeah. It's
Yeah.
got that resonance because it suddenly has a different meaning. You know, that song has that different meaning because, you know, Hiccup provided a refuge for him. Rich Hiccup took him in, and you know, the hooligans loved him, and you know, when he was abandoned by his, yeah. Anyway, but
Yeah, no.
how song can, you know, those refrains and using those different narrative styles and also the different illustrative styles can make a very rich and complex and emotionally complex, you know.
And yeah, because I was gonna say, you know what it really helps with? It helps with characters, and I feel like helping us visualize the characters and their personalities and the way they're kind of presented, especially from the author's point of view, because I know a lot of times it's a different illustrator who comes into it and like
Oh,
does what the author envisions, but it's not exactly. I mean, beautiful illustrations like all around for every single children's book I've ever read. Like seriously, children's books are great for illustrations, but it's something different when it's like from the author's own like imagination, and especially when it comes to characters. So I was wondering if I could play a quick
yeah.
little character game with you,
Oh, yeah.
to to see if you remember. There's only 5 rounds. There's only 5 rounds, but just to see if you can
No one
remember.
beat me at this.
I feel like I mean, you wrote this series, so I feel like it should be okay. These are quotes from the newest book, but there's no spoilers or anything like that in these. So let's see if you can find out who these are. So I'm very good at map reading because I spent such a lot of my life running away. And who was that?
Well, that's Czar, isn't it?
Yes, yes, that was Zar. And Zar is such a brilliant main character because he does go on this huge journey from the first book when he's very like a bit overconfident sometimes and he doesn't quite understand. I mean, we can get back to like the game, but like he doesn't quite understand sometimes when he's like being a bit too much, or like he's not like as aware as he is by the end of the book series. Like he evolves so much by Never and Forever. So for like people watching who haven't yet read Never and Forever, what can readers expect from Zor in the last book? Is the like what's his journey building up to?
Well, Hiccup, I mean, sorry, Czar really needs. You're right. He's the kind of kid who acts first and thinks
Hmm.
later. You know, so he struggles with impulsivity, and you meet a lot of kids like this, and there's something very touching about him as well. He has some great qualities. He's very creative, and he's very he's but he needs to learn about empathy. He needs to learn about controlling his, you know, his emotions, or he needs to learn about the feelings of others. And you know, I take him on quite a journey, and sort of things like when he swaps places in Knock Three Times, because that's the great thing about magic. You can make him, he actually physically swaps places with Bodkin, which really allows him to see things through Bodkin's point of view, because Bodkin is the kind of, you know, kid that he just dismisses a bit as kind of not as brave and not as, you know, as he and it just enables him to see things. And so he does, I'm glad he really does change. Um, sometimes you have to. Sometimes people find that difficult because they're like right from the beginning they want all of their heroes to be kind of perfect.
Yeah.
You can't if you want to have a change. People have to start out. Sometimes people complain with me, oh, he's not sufficiently likable at the beginning. Actually, I never struggled with that with Tsar. I thought he was very touching right from the beginning, even when you felt he was wrong and he was being he was being annoying, and there's still something very touching about him.
Yeah.
But he does go on quite a journey.
He's
Um,
incredible. I loved him from the beginning. I thought he was great, a great
yeah,
character to follow. I feel like a lot of kids do.
yeah.
Like think, they relate to Zara at least. But yeah, are you ready for round two?
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. Where's my mouse? Oh, there it is. I am going to expel the witches from the wildwoods forever, and before that, I'm going to shut down this mine for kindness.
Oh, well, that's got to be Wish, hasn't it? That's got to be Wish.
Yes, it's Wish,
Oh,
and she is as a female protagonist as well. Like, I feel like she's such a strong female role model for a lot of
yeah,
probably young girls to read this.
yeah.
She must have been such a treat to write.
She's such a treat to write, and I really identify with Wish. I mean, she's a very. I mean, she and Zara have a lot to teach each other. Actually, and she really teaches Zara about empathy and of seeing things from each other's point of view, and that is a. It's not a weak. Sometimes it's seen as weak, and I think she's very, very strong. Wish. But she has things to learn from Zara as well. Is that she can learn from his, and I like that his confidence and his belief in himself, and in kind of moments where when at the end I don't want to give a spoiler, but it's really Zara's defiance is really helpful, and the way that he stands up to his father is really helpful for her to learn and to believe in herself. So I think that's a very important role model for girls. I totally agree, and I think a lot of girls do identify with Wish and need to kind of learn to have confidence in themselves and in their point of view. But she's a really she does as well. She's kind of she's not afraid to quietly go her own way right from the beginning as well, in a slightly more sneaky, less openly defiant way than Zara. But she does. She goes. I do. I don't know what it is, Gav. I do identify with characters who don't necessarily automatically fit in
Yeah.
for whatever reason. And Zara and Wish don't fit in for very different reasons. And nor does he, Gavin. Nor does. I mean,
Yeah, they're two sides of the same coin, I feel.
yes. And I think that children really identify with that. Because I get so many letters from children who say they're struggling to fit in for whatever reason, and it's been helpful to them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love them so much. Yeah, they're two of my favorite middle grade characters. Um,
What
I'll go through them.
Wish
Yeah,
and
which is
Zara.
all. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, in fact, actually, I think round four is probably one of my favorite characters. But round three, it's not really a quote, but it's something that this character does.
Oh, Bodkin.
Blank. Yeah,
Oh, Bodkin.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Bless him, bless him. He's
Yeah.
such a great side piece for Wish and Zara on there. Just
Yes. Well,
so
Bodkin,
funny.
you see, it's so interesting because I say I put a lot of myself in Wish, but also Bodkin, the kind of the character who I write this very naturally, the character who's quietly who's having to go along with it, but he's sort of propelled by the kind of he's trying to keep he loves Wish and he's trying to keep her safe, but he's propelled unwillingly into the adventure. And I really identify with that. It's like I love the character, particularly of Bilbo Baggins.
Oh yes,
I
yeah.
love that character. And actually, I could never quite get along with Frodo quite in the same way because it's the sort of, oh my God, I'm in the adventure without really. But he really does. He really struggled to kind of I mean, he does get through, he has to be braver than the others to,
Mhm.
because it's harder for them because even Wish is is braver naturally than Bodkin. Bodkin is the bodyguard who is naturally, I know, bless him. So I'm very
Bless him.
fond of Bodkin.
Same. He's definitely the unlikely hero who I feel like I would be like if I was thrust into like an adventure story. I don't know if I'd be able to handle. I would love to, but I don't think I would. Round four. I is home.
Oh, I is home. That squeezed you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can't do the voices as good as anybody else. Like I can't do it as good as you. I can't do it as good as David Tennant.
Oh,
I so
oh, no.
cute. And Squeeze Juice in the final book as well also goes on like quite an incredible like we are left with Squeeze just being in such a immortal danger and there's like so much going on with Squeeze just in the final book. I feel like when I talk to people who watch my channel and they say, "Oh my god, I love Squeeze Juice so much. I'm so worried about Squeeze Juice." Should people be worried about Squeeze Juice in the final book? Like you really put Squeeze Juice through the ringer, I think.
I do. I really do. Um, and it is interesting. I sort of I think you should be this, but I think you should be a bit worried. And the reason why I think you should be a bit worried is that um, Roald Dahl, okay,
Mm,
um, who let's whatever you may think of Roald Dahl. I mean, when I was a child, when I was a child, I found the experience of reading Roald Dahl very exciting. And the reason why I felt the experience of reading Roald Dahl, because I thought, oh my God, I'm in the hands of somebody who really could go too far.
mhm.
Because he does go too far, doesn't he?
Don't parents get eaten by
Oh,
like
yeah,
rhinos and things? And
the very first sentence. And then you're like, oh my, that's electrifying. It's like,
yeah,
all bets are off. It's like Game of Thrones, first episode. Wham! You're like, nobody
you just
is.
don't know what to expect. Nobody's safe. Nobody's
Um,
safe. You should be worried.
you should be worried. And so that is electrifying. And I knew that as a child. That was, and the witches. Oh, Roald Dahl's The
Mm,
Witches. Oh, I can't reread that. That is just too, for an imaginative person, that is just anyway.
yeah,
So I think you need to feel that. Um, because otherwise there's no sense of peril or danger and so
excitement.
and excitement. I think you felt that with Harry Potter. I think you felt that you were in the hands of somebody who really might, has the capacity to, you've got to feel that the author could have the guts to do it because otherwise it just doesn't feel that the peril might be. And actually with How to Train Your Dragon, the the first, I hate to say it, Gav, but the first iteration of Toothless did die.
Oh
I know! I
my gosh.
hate that.
That would have scarred me.
I know! Well, it would scar me, so that's why I didn't do it. That's why I
Oh,
didn't do it, because I know, that's why I didn't do it. Um, but the fact that it even occurred to me for a second that I could do it, and the fact that
yeah.
I drew, it does it does make it something feel more perilous, I think. It makes the journey feel more genuinely exciting. If you do it, however, if you ever do it, I'm not necessarily recommending it to you out there.
Just kill them all off.
No, I'm not recommending it, particularly for little children. These are young children read. Anyway, but if you do it, and I think you can do it, but I think you have to do it really. Charlotte's Web, I think, is
Oh,
of a book. Oh,
oh,
I know.
oh.
Yeah, there is
Even
a.
as an adult. Oh,
It
even as an
destroyed
adult.
me, but it did put me back together again, and that's kind of important. Is that is that it was heartbreaking, but it was somehow glorious, and it was also it felt like it had been dealt with. It felt like there was a wisdom there that could carry you through the experience. And
Right.
that is something that I feel that you have to do, because I have in the past, like for instance, I don't know, is spoiler today in book 11 of
It,
How to
it's
Train Your
okay.
Dragon?
It's okay.
A main character does die, but I hope I put it in the context of of something that has wisdom to it and made that character, was respectful for his life having meaning, and it being, for a reason. And I hope it felt not too dark, because if it was too dark, if it was random and it wasn't, if it wasn't dealt with really wisely, I I I think I wouldn't feel happy with it. Yeah.
I
That
totally
is
get that. Yeah, I totally get that. Especially since, like, as we were talking earlier about like themes and heavy themes for children, there is like kind of you don't have to talk down to children. They are smarter than they seem, and they can. I feel like they can handle a lot more than we give them credit for. So when have something like that in a book, yeah, there's some that can be like a hopeful message, or like life isn't over. After like a character death, maybe it's just like things go on, like things move on, and you can get better. And yeah, I totally take that from that.
mm,
Yeah, sorry, it's been an
yes.
hour. I've got like a few questions left. Is
Oh,
that all right?
what
And then I'll.
no, no, whatever you want. Yeah, honestly, I'm really happy. It's lovely. It's lovely to have such great questions, and
Oh, good.
it's really it's really nice to talk about. So don't worry at all.
Oh well,
Um,
I'm glad because I don't often get a chance to talk like in depth about like these kinds of books ever. So like this is like ideal for me. But without spoiling who it is,
okay.
the unknown narrator.
Yes.
Did you always have in your mind? I feel like I feel like I know the answer to this because I think I might have read this somewhere. But just in case people don't know, was that always like who it was? Was that always who you had in mind, or well, actually, I can't really say because this character. Anyway,
Mm. Anyway,
so yeah,
mhm.
did your mind change?
um, yes,
Yeah.
and I don't want to, but I, s- I
Sorry, it's such a hard question, isn't it? It's so tricky to do.
um, in the epilogue by the unknown narrator of book 3, I say, notice how the crucible of the story changes those who listen to it, those who are within it, and the person who is telling it all at the same time. And this thought it was a story with I'm saying it was something else, but that's very important. The crucible of the story changes those who listen to it, those who are within the story, and the person who's telling it, who is me
Mm.
in this case, at the same time. And I think at some point during the telling of the story, I realized I was asking myself a question: who is the narrator? I was asking, who am I?
Deep. It's very deep.
That was an interesting moment. And I think, ah, yeah. And so that's quite interesting. And you sort of have to respond. This is where you're sort of in control of the story, but the story is also out of your control in rather an interesting way. When the story challenges you like that, you have to do a little bit of thinking.
That must be something you've had to do with this entire series. I bet it just didn't go your way when you first started writing the first Wizards of Wands. I bet what happened in book 4 just wasn't exactly maybe what I'm probably not all of it anyway,
Yeah.
especially since you were originally going to have the 3. The whole series must have challenged you as a writer, like to maybe rethink things that you wanted to happen at the start and then change it by the end.
Yes.
What a challenging.
It
Yeah.
is. It does. And I think you have to be open to that. I had this very, I had this very clear idea how it was going to go. but then when you have to be open to letting the story change, because that's where the story can be its most profound, is if it's capable of changing not only the person who you're telling it to, but you yourself. I think that's really interesting, and that is what happened to some extent with How to Train Your Dragon as well. I knew where it was going, but I didn't exactly know everything about it. And so I didn't know it was going to be exactly 12 books, but it had to be 12 books in the end, because it had to be, because, it's like a piece of music, as I say, so there needed to be the 3 books at the beginning, the 3 books in the middle. Actually, no, 4 books, 4 books, so 3 sets of 4. And so it needed to, so the story really starts ramping up in book 9, and then it turns on book 8 and it starts ramping up in book 9, and then the big denouement is in books 10, 11, 12. And so it's just, you felt your way to it. So I didn't set out, I'm definitely gonna, and that's the same thing when I think, oh, it's so tricky to talk about, Gav, but it's really interesting to talk about, because mostly I'm having these conversations just with myself. I don't have, I'm not like,
share the burden.
yeah, I'm not like, because lots of writers I talk to, particularly younger ones, it's interesting, have writing support groups, or and I never grew up with that, and I never had that. So I'm having these conversations myself mostly. But I think you have to be open to the story to changing your mind, and particularly with a big thing like that, when you realize, I was telling this story, partly I was challenging myself in telling the story. Yeah.
Letting it speak for itself, letting it kind of control you every now and then. You've got to, and then that
Mhm.
natural progression. Sometimes the characters as well, they kind of just want to do what they want to do, I guess.
Yeah.
But for this series, then, for the Wizards of One series, for Never and Forever, I did mention in my review of it that I do feel like this was the best book you've ever written, like of any book you've ever read. Like, is it written or wrote? I never know. Is
Oh,
it?
I think you could say both, can't you?
I'll use written then. Out of any book you've ever written, I do feel like Never and Forever is definitely like your like best piece of work. Would
Oh,
you agree with it? Would you say that Never and Forever is probably the book that you're maybe most proud of, or like how do you feel about, like, are you proud of like the end product? Are you happy with it?
yes. I'm always trying to write something better than I wrote before, because you always want to have a sense of challenging and moving forward, um, and so, yeah, so I always am trying to do that. Um, uh, and I think I've evolved as a writer. I think I learned something through How to Train Your Dragon, and as a writer, as an illustrator. So I think The Wizards of Once in general is a more mature series than How to Train Your Dragon, though I love How to Train Your Dragon as well. I think I learned a lot in the writing of it. Um, so I suppose yes, but I'm also, Gavin, I'm not somebody who, I work really, really hard at something and I try and make it as good as I possibly can, but I'm not a big regretter. So I
Mm.
don't go back and say, um, why didn't I do the only thing yes, I suppose I am very proud, very, very proud of Was Once, Never and Forever. And it felt really satisfying conclusion for me. Um, but I suppose the one thing I do regret not having told the story of how Hiccup lost his leg in the How to Train Your Dragon series, because I kind of thought, oh, this is such a big thing, I need to put it into its own thing. But then I want to get back when am I going to have time to tell that story? So there are so there are kind of, because Hiccup losing his leg was in fact was the film people's idea, but it was so right. It was so right for the Hiccup character.
Mm.
And I just didn't have room to put it in. Anyway, I will do one day. I will. Gab,
Oh my god, this is a How
once
to Train Your Gavin exclusive. This is.
I will. So sometimes there is individual, things like that. But in general, I'm not a big regretter. because I kind of think, well, I can do that. It's not like I've stopped writing. But yes, I am really pleased. I tell you, landing a story is always God. It's like landing some kind of difficult, difficult
Yeah.
kind of ski jump or something. I always think a kind of landing a story. You know that guy? Who's that wonderful guy? Who's the ski jumper who didn't really quite know what he was doing with the
Is it Eddie the Eagle? Is that it?
the eagle. I loved Eddie the Eagle. I always think landing a story is a bit like that. Oh my god!
You could lose your fun at any point. You could go into a tree or anything. Yeah.
I can see that spot, but am I just gonna smush? It's a tricky one. You want everything to be satisfying and to come together. And generally, with me, Gav, this is my problem. I've got so many ideas and so many plot lines and so many characters that I need to wrap up in such a teeny weeny space that it's very exciting as a writer to think, is it going to be crash landing? Then the thing is, that in itself is a bit exciting. Sometimes I think when I'm writing a new thing, you think, oh my goodness, is this crazy? Are there too many characters? Are there too many ideas? And are there, but then you think, well,
That's the exciting part, right? You're cultivating this whole new world. It sounds so fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to, at some point, maybe you'll smush straight down into the tree, into the snow. But that's exciting, isn't it? Sometimes you're going to fail. Sometimes you're going to fail, and you have to embrace that failure and do it anyway. Go for it. Channel Eddie the Eagle.
That's my new mantra. That is my new mantra. Just channel Eddie the Eagle. If you crash, if you fall face first into the snow, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Somebody very grand said that. TSL or something said, you've got to, somebody used, I think it was TSL. I'm always something like he said, anybody who's never made a mistake, never tried anything new or something like that. He said something. But yeah, so I think you sort of have to go for it. But it does make the landing rather nerve-wracking. I'm so glad you thought it was the best book I read.
Oh my god, yes. Honestly, I didn't have the audiobook at the time when I first read it, so it just means that when I do reread it, which I do want to do like a whole reread of the entire series from start to finish, I'll have the audiobook on as well. I'll have the entire, because not all of this was illustrated either, because it was the proof. I think there was illustrations to come. So now I've got all of this. I can just start, from start to finish, have the entire complete package again, and it's just gonna, it's one of my favorite children's books of all time now.
So sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know, and I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that. And I'm really happy with the illustrations as well. I really feel that has evolved to tell the story in a really satisfying, emotional way.
Absolutely. And I need the spelling book as well. I need it as an actual physical thing. It's not one of my favorite parts about the series is that spelling book. I need it. Can we get is it Hachette? Is it Hachette? Like, who do I need to contact to get a complete spelling book? Like, I would pay 157 million pounds for it. I would.
All million pages of it, Gav, or would you be satisfied with just a little, I
don't ask too much of you, Cressida, because I know you've got a lot on your plate. I know you have so much on your plate, so I'll take a fraction. But I think that would just be awesome.
I know. I think children love that as well. That's the world building thing, and that's the thing that they then can add on to in their imagination. And that I did. The Book of Dragons was something that I brought out, which again is a way in and get children making their own dragons. And I can see the same thing happening with the spelling book, their own recipes, their own spells, their own, I know. Bother it. No,
Yeah, I know.
back
I
in.
know, I'm sorry. I'm a terrible influence, Cressida. I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a terrible influence.
Who are you?
Oh, I am. I'm the worst. I'm such an enabler. People want to like come into the bookshop and they go, "Oh, I only came in for one book. Oh, it's buy one get one half price. Go for two." It's like
Oh,
just go for it.
that's a great terrible influence. I love that terrible influence.
I mean, same, same. So I'll ask my last question, then I'll let you go. But you did mention earlier that there were projects that you're like you are working on a new thing. Is there absolutely anything at all you can say about it? Like, is there just one sliver of kind of a teasing kind of tease of this new thing?
I know, but the only thing is, Gab. Okay, so I've got various different ideas that I've been working on. This is why I do have to listen to my husband, and him saying, if you don't finish these other series, then you won't be. That's what his argument is to me, which is a good point.
It is.
If I
He's very smart.
15 years writing How to Train Your Dragon. He's like, well, you can't do another 15 years with Wizards of Once because you'll never have these other ideas. So I've got various different ideas that I've been working on. But there's one that I've worked on much more. And but you see, but I haven't even shown it to the publisher. I have shown it to my children, so I can't
Oh,
really. I've shown it to my children and to my husband, and they love it. That's a
oh,
good sign.
good.
That's a
Yeah.
good sign. And it is. What can I say? It's for a kind of a person who enjoys it's Wizards of Once or How to Train Your Dragon. So it's not. It's not. I've suddenly decided. Right, I'm off to write. I don't know. I'm off to write for 25-year-olds and above, and
Totally change your brand.
romantic fiction. No, I haven't suddenly decided that.
Okay,
Um,
good.
but it is kind of slightly different than it is different in some ways. I'm venturing into some territory that I haven't done before, like in rather in total innocence, Gav, like Eddie the Eagle. I'm entering.
Inspiration.
I'm entering slightly an area where I don't think. For instance, I think my children are much more comfortable in understanding this area. I don't want to give anything away. Much more so, they talk very confidently. Oh, you're writing whatever, and I like. Am I? I didn't realise I was writing that. Just you so, but I'm having fun and I'm engaged in this idea, and I think it will be something that I would certainly have loved to have read when I was a kid. What more can you do? You know, so I don't know. Yeah, so that's not
Okay.
really that that's not really much of a teaser, Gav. But
Uh, it's it's something. It promises that there will be more on the horizon, and that's
oh,
like 'cause at least with Wizards of Once, like I knew that you are bringing out another book the next year, or you know what I mean. Like I had that
yeah,
security in the knowledge that there's going to be
yeah,
more Cressida Cowell.
oh,
So at least I know that you're working on stuff and it's making you happy and you're excited about it. That's the main thing. And
yeah.
I'm excited. I'm so excited when it finally comes. When it finally comes, but no pressure. Don't rush. Like anything like that. I'm not pressuring, but I can't wait.
Oh, oh, you're so
Yeah.
sweet. Oh, this has been such a lovely interview. I've
Oh,
really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored that the fact that you came onto my channel and you did this interview with me. Thank you so much. I know I've taken some time out of your day where you could have been spent in it writing your new thing, but you chose
Oh
to
no,
talk to me instead, and I very appreciate that. Thank you so much.
no, my complete pleasure, and it's just really lovely to, I talk about these things. So I've really enjoyed it.
And spread the love. And to anybody watching as well, sometimes I keep forgetting that there will be people watching this. To
Oh,
everyone
yes.
watching as well, there will be, again, links in the description box. You know, if we have not convinced you yet to read The Wizards of Wands, what are you doing? So we have all the links, Cressida's socials, the YouTube, everything. It is down in the description box. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you again, Cressida, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
My
Bye,
complete.
everyone. Oh.